Hello and welcome to Four Wheels Good. It's one thing owning an Aston Martin DB7, it's quite another driving it to its full potential. Later in the programme, Mike Rutherford takes it for a spin, and nearly does. Also tonight, Nikcy Fox goes behind bars to find out how convicts and classic cars have come together in a unique collaboration. But the first part of this programme is devoted to a major new car, due on the market early in the new year. A family saloon, and soon to be joined by an estate model, which has been much improved since its previous incarnation, yet has been priced to compete head-on with the likes of the Mondeo, Vectra, Primera and 406. Previously, it's had a negligible share of the all-important fleet market, but is the tide about to turn for Volkswagen and their all-new Passat?
When Volkswagen unveiled the Mark V Passat to British eyes at Birmingham last month, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that this was a completely new vehicle. Gone with the boxy and inspiring looks of the Mark IV, replaced instead by smooth, curvy styling. The new vehicle has a completely new body shell, a new floor pan, new engine range, even a new interior. In fact, the only thing that remains to connect it with the Mark IV is the name, Passat. So why not change the name on this completely revised model?
There's always two arguments to this. If you start with the new name, not only do you have to get the name across, but then you have to show what profile that name is actually going to have, where that product's going to sit in the marketplace. It is our opinion that Passat has a good name over here. It has a very good name in Europe. Therefore, to change the profile of the vehicle is actually easier than trying to establish it and then change the profile. If you go back 4 or 5 years, the brand was very strong on golf. We saw 2 years ago we introduced new Polo. That gave us the second leg of the brand. So we were then playing with 2 large volumes in 2 different segments. Passat gives us the third leg, puts us into the upper medium segment, which puts the whole brand in a much stronger position where we have 3 cars now, all playing in different segments of the marketplace.
In terms of styling, Passat 5 bears very little resemblance to the boxy, masculine lines of its predecessor. This time around it's far sleeker, far more stylish and smooth. In fact, this rounded roof and rounded wheel arches, they've been taken from Concept 1, which is the name for the new Beetle. Now all this is for a reason. It's not just to look good, it's all about aerodynamics, or to be a bit more precise, something called the CD factor.
Yeah, CD for the Passat ranges from 0.27 for the small engined version, and at worst it's only 0.29 for the fastest Passat model with the largest engine. And CD is a measure of the vehicle's slipperiness. For example, if the CD of the Passat was 0.5, which would be very bad, it would require twice as much energy to push it through the atmosphere at a given speed and use twice as much fuel as if it was, say, 0.25. So it's a measure of how efficient a car is aerodynamically.
So really that's how you've been able to get these amazing fuel consumption figures, particularly on the TDI.
Well, the TDI is a highly efficient engine even by diesel standards. In fact, its thermodynamic efficiency is better than any other engine in a passenger car. And if you couple a very fuel efficient engine with a very slippery shape, you get some extraordinary performance and economy figures. For example, the 110 horsepower Passat will do 122 miles an hour, which is fast by any standards for a large car, and yet at 56 miles an hour it can return 76 miles to the gallon.
Hey, that looks good at the front, but come and take a look at this. How about that for size then, Blue Eyes? Oh, you could fit nearly all my holiday luggage in there. With a boot with that low capacity, it makes you wonder why they're bothering with the estate version, but I suppose somebody wants them. Another good thing about the Passat is the 60-40 split folding rear seats, which gives you even more versatility. And one great idea that they've come up with is locking rear seats. So they're going to stump those thieves that think it's an easy way to get into your goodies in the boot of the car. Whoa, just look at how tight and how smooth that join is. That's because of a revolutionary new welding technique.
I think when you look at the car, quite a few people have commented on how tight the bonnet shut lines are and the shut of the doors. And this is achieved by having a body side pressing, which is pressed all in one piece. So you have no joints on the pillars. Being one pressing, it comes from one piece of pressed tooling, which means you get very accurate geometry right around the door frames and on the whole side of the car. And of course you have a one-piece door frame pressing that's fitting into these apertures, so the doors fit into the frames extremely well with very tight fits. The structure of the new Passat is in fact 30% stiffer than the old one, and this comes from having fewer components. We also use a new laser welding technique, so laser beams give a very consistent, very thin, very strong weld, very quick, and lend themselves very well to modern production techniques. So several of these things that people notice actually come from very sophisticated production techniques.
Volkswagen have given us the TDI version for our test today. It's 110 brake horsepower with absolutely amazing diesel consumption, which means that it's probably going to be one of their best sellers. They're confident that the fleet buyers are going to go for it, and I can see why. Last year Volkswagen sold 8,000 Mark IV Passats. This year they want to sell 32,000 Mark V Passats. And these are the guys that are going to have to do it.
Oh, right.
Hello. Have you seen one of these yet? It's a Mark V Passat.
No, I haven't seen one as yet.
Well, do you know that in 1997 you're going to sell 32,000 of them?
I would think we probably will look at that car.
Right, well I think you better have a test drive. The keys are in the ignition.
Fine.
Let's go.
Okay. It's definitely it's a more comfortable car than the old car. I think the position of the seat in the old car, I could never actually get it quite right. Whereas this one, obviously I haven't adapted the seating much already, but it feels fine straight away. The steering is definitely lighter. Whether that's due down to the tyre size on this vehicle to the old one, I don't know. That we'll obviously find out in the future. The quietness inside the car is remarkable.
For a diesel, isn't it?
For a diesel, it's so quiet. I was quite used to the old Passat TDI, and it was quite a noisy car inside the vehicle. We obviously made a big effort on the sound improvement inside the vehicle, and it's very pleasing inside of it. You wouldn't be able to tell it's actually a diesel car. The engine's obviously a newer engine than the old Passat. The old Passat was 90 brake horsepower, whereas this is the 110. So you certainly feel that more responsive throughout any gear, whether it be in fifth gear to just pull away is not a problem, or going through the gears for acceleration for overtaking. So yes, there's definitely an improvement there. Obviously the car it's been pitched against is the Vector, the Mondeo, that type of area. I think it's what people have been looking for. The Passats in the past have probably never been marketed to their full potential, whereas this car obviously will be. And I just don't think there'll be a problem for the dealers at all. It'll be a case of, will they be able to get enough cars to sell? Really impressed with the car. Totally different car to the old Passat, and the fact that the handling's smoother, steering's smoother, feels lighter, more responsive.
No negative points there then?
Only the fact it's left-hand drive, until I could drive a right-hand drive one, but no, I haven't.
We popped inside Minories Garage of Durham to have a chat with Chris Whitehead, who's the sales manager, about these ambitious targets, and lo and behold, we found the VW Beetle. Chris, the styling on the Mark V Passat is very similar, isn't it, to this styling on the Concept 1 Beetle. Mm-hmm. What do you think of it?
I think it's a nice shape. I think all cars are going very similar, but with the curves it makes it look a very special car. They went square at one stage. This looks very modern. Yeah,
criticisms of the Passat last time round with this sort of horrible boxy, very uninspiring styling. Do you think VW have got it right this time?
I think they've got it totally right. I think it's an exciting car to look at, an exciting car to drive, superb car.
Well, you're the people that do need to be excited by it, because they're expecting you to go from 8,000 sales this year to 30-odd thousand next year. Can you do it?
I think we certainly can. I think our market will change. I think we'll be looking at the fleet market next year, where we've been out of that market for a long time. We didn't have a car to show the fleet buyer. This car is going to answer all those questions.
Chris, will it be just the fleet buyer, do you think?
I think the greatest percentage of sales will come from fleet, but there'll be one or two people who want to perhaps run a bigger car for children, 5 people in the car. They'll be attracted to the car, but our greatest percentage of sales will come from the fleet.
How are you going to get rid of the Mark IVs. What are you going to do? Because with this around, people are going to want to go for it. Big discounting?
No, I think it's been an organised sellout of the cars. There's been very few left now, so it's not going to be mad rush how we're going to get out of these cars. It's been very well organised. We're all left with very few left now.
Now, you're also an Audi dealer here. Are you quaking in your boots a little bit because of the fact that it is so like the A4, but £3,000 less?
And bigger. It's going to be a big competitor for Audi A4. Galvanised body, ABS as standard, yeah.
Right, one last thing. Anything that you would like to ask VW about the launch and about the new Passat? Any questions for them?
Just basically, when is the launch going to be? We were told the 2nd of December, so we can start planning for a launch. The sooner we get to know that, we can start putting things into place to sell 32,000 cars.
Left-hand drive models are on sale in Europe now, but production of the right-hand drive models have hit a few snags, so it's going to be early next year before you'll be able to drive away a new Passat from your local showroom. Still, they do say that all good things come to those who wait, don't they?
Yes, there will be some waiting, but to a certain extent, some waiting is not a bad thing. It means that the car can then be built to the customer's order rather than the customer wanting a red one but have to take a green one and they're not actually 100% happy. It's better to build the car to the customer's specification, and then they're much happier, and they're much happier with us and the dealer as well.
The outside of the car may look good, but it's once you actually take a look inside that you realise how much this has moved on from the Mark IV. Volkswagen seem to have realised that desirability of a car doesn't really depend on basics like economy and fuel consumption. It's attention to detail that makes it stand out from the rest. Just take a look at the detail that's in the new Passat. It's incredible. There are that many extras, I'm going to have to read you the list. OK, let's start with vanity mirrors on both sun visors are illuminated from roof-mounted lights, none of that glaring in your eyes. You know how when you're in the car on a sunny day and you get both the sun visors down, driver and passenger, and there's still that annoying bit in the middle that the sun gets through? Well, not anymore, because in the Passat, a third sun visor fills the gap between the driver and passenger visors. And just to prove to you how important VW think class is with this car, what a lovely fade out. This model has full air conditioning, even, would you believe, in the glove box. Perfect for keeping your chocolates cold. Now, one thing that Volkswagen have put a lot of research into and spent a lot of money on is cup holder technology. This elegantly designed dual can system slides out, forming a semicircle around the gear lever. Now, the SE, the Sport and the V6 models have an additional pair for the rear seat passengers too, just so they don't feel left out. Now, Volkswagen really have taken this class thing to the extreme. Look at that, no flicking back, a nice smooth movement. And take a look at the ashtray. Damped and very slick. The smooth curving lines of this well-appointed and extremely clear and user-friendly dashboard are set off by this 3-spoke steering wheel. But you know, I can't help thinking it should have an Audi badge in the middle. The great mystery is how on earth this car can have the features and the feel of many executive cars, yet have a starting price of just under £14,000.
It's what we call the effect that Dr. Lopez has had on purchasing back in Wolfsburg, where they've managed to bring down their purchase costs and actual build costs of cars. It's also this idea of now using common components right through all 4 brands that are owned by Volkswagen. It doesn't mean that the brands are the same. It's using a library of parts, and each engineering team create their own car from those library of parts, i.e. gearboxes, engines, floor pans, etc. And this again helps to bring costs down. And Volkswagen in Germany sees that there is a big potential in the UK market, and they see that there is a big potential within the fleet market. So here we have a vehicle that has to compete with its competitors.
What about service and parts, which is traditionally where VW have failed? It's perceived as being expensive after service.
We again can show where now that we have our parts in line with competitors, and if you take old Passat versus new Passat, parts prices on a basket of parts has fallen by 33%, which I think shows that we are now serious on getting our parts prices right.
This car certainly does have power and an awful lot of refinement, But for the real speed freaks amongst you, you can look forward to getting behind the wheel of the V6, 2.8 litre, 30 valve with permanent four-wheel drive, which will be hitting the streets next spring. A big Passat criticism in the past was the gears. They were really notchy and quite difficult to get in. Well, that's not the case this time. They're absolutely smooth as anything. One feature that's available on the Passats is an optional extra at around £1,500 if you're feeling like you really want to splash out, is a great navigation system. Now, we saw something like it a couple of weeks ago when we did the NEC special in the new Ford Mondeo. The great thing about this one, though, is that whereas the Ford Mondeo's panel was situated down near the gears, which you had to look down to all the time, on the Passat it's right in front of you on this fabulous little dashboard. And you can get your directions just from looking straight ahead. So let's give it a go. I don't know Newcastle that well. I'm getting a bit lost. Let's see if it works.
Your position is located outside of the digitized road network.
Well, that's typical. They haven't mapped Newcastle yet, which hopefully should be addressed by the end of next year for those people that are interested. Have you wondered why it's that rather authoritarian female voice? It sounds like a school teacher or a nanny, doesn't it? I mean, I know some of you out there would rather have a breathy young female saying, go straight ahead and don't stop, but somehow I think it might take your mind off your driving. In this report, you've heard an awful lot of positive things about the new Passat. In fact, the industry in general has been startled by the innovations of this Mark V car and the realisation that VW seems to have got it right at last. But you know, we're an impartial, independent programme and we have to bring you the downside. Now, I've been chatting to some of the hardened hacks here at this press launch. They've been driving cars for years. One thing that everyone seems to agree on: the steering wheel. The badge, it's just too shiny.
Well, so many new models have had to improve the standards in all areas that it's extremely difficult to find real design faults. Thus, car buying decisions become all the more subjective. Doesn't that make life more interesting? Well, we'll have a short pit stop now, and then it's back onto the circuit at Goodwood to test out a shiny new Aston Martin. We'll see you soon. Hi, and welcome back to Four Wheels Good here on the Granada Men and Motors channel. The Aston Martin DB7 is one of the most coveted cars in the world. But what's it really like to drive flat out? Well, Mike Rutherford reports from Goodwood.
Well, here we are at a very wet, glorious Goodwood, and I'm about to go out and play with £80,000 worth of Aston Martin DB7. Ta-da! Harry, Aston Martin is enjoying probably its best year for many, many years. What do you think is the reason for that success?
I think it's due entirely to the DB7. If you look back in 1992, we made exactly 66 motor cars. Last year we made 723. The dealer body's gone from 43 in 1993 to over 100 now, so it is due entirely to the DB7.
So where are all these buyers coming from? They weren't there before. Where have they appeared from?
A lot of them in the United States. We relaunched ourselves into the States beginning this year. They are now taking over 30% of all the DB7s that we can make, and in fact 70% of the DB7s we've sold in the States so far have all been the convertible model.
And what is it? Do you think it's the Britishness of that car? It sounds like you're exploiting it.
I would suggest exclusivity. It's handmade, it's British craftsmanship, it is traditional. And you have to say, if you live in the United States or almost anywhere in the world, if you own an Aston, the chances of your seeing another one are extremely remote. In fact, if you want to see another Aston, you go off and join the owners club.
This term handmade is often talked about, but I mean, what does that mean in layman's terms? What does handmade mean in the Aston Martin context?
Handmade means each part being fitted by hand, not a robot in sight. It's left to the perception and the judgment of the man who assembles the car to make sure that we maintain the quality. Sure, we use everything that we can to measure that quality electronically, but ultimately it's down to the perception and the judgment of the craftsman who puts the car together for you.
We're talking good old-fashioned craftsmanship.
Yes, you're talking sort of skill and integrity, really. I mean, case in point, it takes 2.5 hours to fit the engine into the chassis. It's done very carefully because it's an extremely tight fit under the bonnet.
You're here as a prospective DB7 buyer.
Correct, yes.
What are your impressions so far, and what have you done since you've been here today?
Well, the day has been fabulous despite the rain. This is an ideal opportunity to actually drive the car, obviously, but also to get some instruction from qualified race instructors of how to actually drive the car properly.
Why Aston Martin?
Fundamentally, it's British. I love Aston Martins.
I'm saying very little at the moment, Mike, because I want to see. I want you to relax into your normal style, which is.
Well, I've got to be honest. I don't like this wet track. I don't like wet roads generally.
Why?
But,
you'll learn more on the wet than you will in the dry. You're doing fine, Mike. I'm not saying a lot because you've got to learn which way the corners go. And
yeah.
When you're driving a car on the circuit or driving it on the road, what you're trying to do is to keep the car as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
You imagine that you've got boxes of eggs on the roof, and every time you do anything vicious, they're all going to fall off. You're doing fine. You look the part too, if I might say.
Oh, I'm not sure that I feel it.
And the other little tip that can help you drive smoothly is when you go out to a corner, you've got to slow down for that corner, and you do that by either braking or coming off the throttle. We put brake signs up to say that is where you brake. You want the horsepower to come in after you've gone through a corner and not halfway round. So one of the first things we do is to try and get people to use a higher gear than they would normally use. And you don't have to go quickly, you don't have to change gear all the time.
The moment I did it, I knew it was wrong.
You do?
Yeah.
And by the end of one of these courses, if you did a course, by the end of it, you'd know exactly when you were right and when you were wrong all the time, and you'd get it right and right. It's just building up speed. Go down to third for this one. That's second, but it's close. And now accelerate. That's good. That's very nice. Beautifully accelerated. Fourth, that's fine. Make sure he doesn't come right out.
Oh, okay.
Now you can get faster. That's good. Well done. Let's build up a bit of speed now. We're going to go to third and we're not going to go to second. Hey, he's done it. By golly, he's done it. You're driving about 300% better than when you started, and smoother, and you're going a lot quicker. Is that true? Does it feel better?
That either means I'm a pretty good driver now, or I was pretty damn lousy to begin with.
Well, I think it was a combination of you being lousy to begin with. No, it's not knowing how to drive on a circuit. I can honestly say that I was not worried once.
Really?
No.
So, come on, points out of 10.
Out of 10? Out of 10, for the first time, I'd give you 7 out of 10.
And am I the new Michael Schumacher?
But, well, not Master Schumacher, maybe Mrs. Schumacher.
John, this is quite unusual. You're an existing DB7 owner, and you're just looking, I guess, at what might be on the horizon for the future.
Yeah, I think so. I'm very fortunate to own one from October last year, and I've come to try the Volante, which is a manual car, where mine's automatic, and loved it too. I've really enjoyed it. So later on, may change my existing one to a Volante.
And what are you comparing your Aston Martin with? What have you owned in the past?
Of Jaguars and Daimlers, and there was a financial influence, believe it or not, earlier on, because of the amount of money I was going to lose when I bought. If I was going to buy a Daimler 9 months ago, I'd have lost so much. But with the Aston, the thought of only losing 20% over 2 years or 30% over 2 years was encouraging.
Is it value for money?
Wow, what a question. It is for me because I've enjoyed it, and I own a company and I've allowed my company to buy this for me, and I think it influences some of the potential customers I've got. I did originally want to buy something that was British.
This is, if you like, this says something about our company. This screams at people that we're successful, surely.
Absolutely right. Let me just say that when I first started business, my first new car, I hid because I was afraid that people would think I'm earning too much money. Now, I think the customers that I deal with, they like to think that they're dealing with a company that can afford a car like that for a chairman, number one. And number two, know that the chairman appreciates good workmanship, because the Aston Martin has very good workmanship, I can promise you that. It's been as good as I expected, having paid £80,000. I expect something good, and I think Aston Martin have sold me something good.
It's got to be one of the ultimate head turners, hasn't it?
I think it is. And it is nice, but it turns my head every time I see one. Yeah, I think they're a beautiful looking car, and everybody else does. It's a lovely vehicle. I'd certainly buy another one, let's put it like that, Mike.
The great thing about this job is that I sit inside an £82,500 car with lots of walnut and leather and British opulence, and the film crew stand in the brain.
Wonderful. Fast cars, talented drivers, rich business people, and Mike Rutherford. What a combination. Now, remember last week Nikcy Fox visited the huge motor museum in the belly of the Las Vegas gambling complex. Well, most of the vehicles are restored and maintained by convicts at the local prison in Indian Springs. Well, this week Nikcy will be going behind bars to find the cars, which will soon be going on display. That's after this break. Welcome back to Four Wheels Good. We bring you all sorts of motoring stories from around the world every week. And now we join Nikcy Fox at a prison in Nevada, where the convicts do their bit for the community by learning vehicle restoration and maintenance skills.
A head count in what must be the world's most exclusive car restoration shop. This is the prison at Indian Springs, Nevada, where just 40 of the 1,400 inmates restore million-dollar automobiles for the Imperial Palace collection in nearby Las Vegas. Murderers and bank robbers vie for a job in here. It's hard work, but not traditional hard labour.
All right, back to work. Rattle.
Oh, yes,
boss. People don't really understand how the program works. They think, well, Imperial Palace has just hired inmates to do work at cheap labor. Well, that's not actually the way it works. The way it works is we hire these guys for minimum wage, and all these guys that are working in this shop in here are all saving taxpayers' money on the private industry or private sector side. They pay room and board, they pay meals, they pay for their clothes to be washed. So I think roughly on what they make in a 2-week period, they might bank about $70 of that, and the rest goes out to pay for things. So it's saving taxpayers a lot of money too by this whole. Everybody benefits.
But Dave didn't foresee those benefits when the Imperial Palace asked him to set up the project.
At first, I thought my boss Richie Klein was completely bonkers. I'd been around some prisons in high school, or we went through for tours or whatever. And those are some pretty hardcore prisons. Of course, I had visions of seeing guys standing here, holding the knife to you, and it's not that way at all. I would rather work with guys in here than guys on the street. They seem like they apply themselves more. People ask me, well, what's it like working with these criminals? Well, the only difference between myself, basically, I shouldn't probably say this, but the guys in here, these guys got caught. Some guys, I say that lightly, because some guys are in here for real bad crimes. Other guys, they just got caught up in something. They got around the wrong people, were brought up wrong, had no family, and they just need a chance in life. And that's what this program helps to offer, is a chance for them to do something and show people they can do something.
With the experience gained here, there's the chance of a well-paid job outside when parole comes around. Inside, only a hand-picked few get the chance to show what they can do.
So how did you get to be on that original team?
We had an interview. We had to have an interview. We applied for the job, and then Dave had an office set up over at the Far Bay, and he would talk to us and see what we knew, and how interested we was in the job, you know. And so by doing that, he took it upon himself to say, well, he sounds interested and he doesn't, you know, and he hired us from that, you know, from the way he interviewed us and what little qualities we had.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of us, you know, who's appreciate that we did get the job. You know, we've learned a lot from him, you know, as far as restoration and just different things in a whole, you know, and it's made my life a lot more easier.
Dude, one thing I want to add too is, you know, I was really impressed with the management here. You know, Dave, man, he's you know, he's a little bit, I'd say, far advanced than most any other guys that restore these cars. He's really good. And
he knows what he's
doing.
doing.
I figured that I've been taught by the best now.
And the best is only just good enough at Indian Springs. Every car that comes in is carefully taken apart and painstakingly reconstructed. Whatever its needs, the skills are here.
We started out with some real tough cars. They kind of put us through the ringer, myself and the guys in here. But we've graduated now, that's why we're doing a lot of Bentleys, Duesenberg, stuff like that, because the caliber work we've turned out has been pretty good. We've competed in national competition. We had a Duesenberg Beverly that went to Pebble Beach in Auburn, Indiana this last summer, and that's a real big mark.
So even to be allowed to participate is the big thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Pebble Beach is an invitation type thing. Well, that's not where you can't, it's not like you finish a car and you just go enter it. You have to be asked, you're invited. So it's kind of like, that's the Ralph Lauren and different ones like that all have cars in it. So, you know, for the guys out here, it was a big time thing, which it was for me too. It's the first time I actually had a car myself that went to Pebble Beach, you know, like that.
OK, they didn't win, but there's lots of time to work on future entries. This is one workshop where a steady turnover of staff is welcomed.
And what's your plans for the future? When are you going to get out of here?
I got probably maybe about 15, maybe 16 more months to go before I get out here. And hopefully that when I leave here, I hope I got a job downtown at Imperial Palace down there.
All right, good.
You know, that's what I'm hoping for. I mean, things don't always work out the way you want them to, but I'm trying.
Yeah. And that's all anyone can ask. But it was time to say goodbye to the guys at Indian Springs because, to round off my trip to the Imperial Palace, Dave had promised me a drive in a 1931 J-Class straight 8 Duesenberg. The makers guaranteed it would do over 100 in second gear. Nowadays, it's limited to a sedate turn around the parking lot. After all, there isn't much more you'd dare to do with $1 million museum piece.
Very nice too. Now, there are certain things all responsible motorists regularly monitor to keep their vehicles safe and roadworthy. Tyres, lights, oil, shock absorbers. Shock absorbers? Come on. Hands up anyone who actually checks them. Exactly, I thought so. Well, shocks are the sort of item we tend to forget about until a service report suggests we change them, and then we begrudge shelling out. It's estimated that 1 in 4 cars on our roads are driving on shocks worn out of tolerance, and new shocks can significantly improve not just comfort of ride, but also safety, as Peter Baker reports.
These pictures from a TV commercial from a major shock absorber company graphically show the benefits of new shocks when it comes to decreasing braking distance. In fact, it's been estimated that at 30 miles an hour, with just 1 worn shock absorber, braking distance could be increased by 2 meters. Tests have shown that with worn shocks, the driver can lose control of his car at only 35 miles an hour when swerving to avoid an obstacle. On a wet road, aquaplaning begins at a far lower speed, here at only 50 miles an hour. And at night, the bouncing caused by worn shocks will cause dazzling of oncoming vehicles. All these are proven facts, but it's amazing how little the average motorist knows about shock absorbers.
Great big chunks of rubber, presumably.
Something on a car, isn't it?
Well, it's a piece of metal that goes up and down inside itself.
I haven't a clue.
It's like a big spring on the vehicle.
Is it when you mean, like when you get the airbags that come out of steering wheels?
A shock absorber is something that is in the spring area of the car.
Not really. On the underside to do with the wheels?
Good gracious, no, I've never seen one in my life.
Well, we've got some customers having their shocks actually tested back here, so some people know what a shock absorber is. But why is it, Michael, people don't even care about them?
Shock absorbers, out of mind, out of sight. We did a survey last year where we tested 11,000 vehicles, and even though we suspected it, we were amazed to find that 1 in 4 cars were driving around with worn shock absorbers on the public highways. Members of the public don't realise how safety critical a shock absorber is, and they don't realise it's failed. The motor industry should advise the customers a lot better. Unless you tell somebody, how are they supposed to know? And likewise, the MOT test is insufficient on testing shock absorbers.
Well, what are the actual rules there, the MOT?
The MOT says that if a shock absorber is leaking oil excessively, what does that mean? Your interpretation of that would be different to mine.
Did you find that some people are a little bit reluctant to change them because they don't quite understand what they do and you can't see them?
Are a bit reluctant, yes, but I mean, if you show them a leaking one, they change them no problem at all. It's when they're not leaking and you just tell them that they're worn and there's no signs of it, that's when they're a bit reluctant, you know. We've had a couple on the Maestros and Montego Rays where they've actually snapped off, you know, and they didn't realise what it was until we told them about it. People sometimes come in and they don't realise that there is different types of shock absorbers, and when you try and explain the benefits of the more expensive ones, they don't realise.
We use industry groups in the UK and the TUV in Germany. We take vehicles out on specially prepared test tracks with worn shock absorbers and with new shock absorbers. We've actually proved that a worn shock absorber increases braking distance. It allows the car to aquaplane a lot faster on cornering. It's a lot less stable. I mean, one of the most common things with a worn shock absorber, it's much more difficult ergonomically to drive a car. People get tired a lot quicker and people fall asleep on the motorways, etc. A shock absorber is a critical safety item.
The tests we did were to try and understand what people feel in the car, the effects of worn shock absorbers on a car, how it affects people. It affects people in many ways. It makes a car harder to drive if the shock absorbers are worn. It's harder to corner. It's harder to brake quicker. So we did all these tests to prove that. It's very easy for us to say we believe, but we now know, rather than walking around saying we believe that. This obviously is the spring on the car with the shock absorber.
Right.
At the point where the handle is, the wheel would be normally connected. If we push down on the shock absorber, as happens on a car when the car is moving, we compress the spring. When the spring's released, the spring should be damped rather than coming out on its own energy. The shock absorber is designed to take away some of the energy of the spring. With a worn shock absorber, that doesn't happen.
Oh my God. Right, okay, so basically not a very smooth ride, is it? And not very safe?
Safety would be the main thing. I don't think you'd even notice the smoothness. You'll be trying to keep the car on the road with the shock absorber in this condition.
And what's the other one then, an OK shock absorber?
This is an OK shock absorber as we supply new, just fitted to your car. Same spring, same energy in the spring, and the shock absorber damps the energy.
Now, you've brought with us today a kind of a history of shock absorbers, haven't you, Colin? What's this old one you got here?
It's a very old one from around the early 1900s, I would expect, but I can't find any dates on this one, so I can't be too sure when it was made. But this is a friction device shock absorber fitted on the very early cars, where there would be material within here of a leather wadding of some form of material, and that would cause friction when these two pieces are pushed together.
Right.
And the force required is very, very high.
Okay.
This is why most of the vehicles in those days tended to have a very, very hard and choppy ride, as you can see on the London to Brighton run vehicles.
Yeah, they bounce around all over the place, don't they? Just what is this, and why is this latest high-tech thing?
Well, firstly, this is actually a strut, a front strut off a car. What this allows us to do is remove some of the compromises that we have as shock absorber manufacturers, where we look for comfort in a car and also safety, stability, control. People talk about comfort, they talk about control. It's a compromise that we have on a daily basis. This allows us to make the shock absorber have more comfort with the same amount of control when it's required.
In a nutshell, a shock absorber keeps the wheel on the road. You can have the best tyres, the best brakes. If the wheel isn't in contact with the road, your braking will be severely reduced.
Fascinating. I think I'll check my shock absorbers tomorrow. Honest. You learn things on this programme, don't you? Now, something else educational is a visit to Sterling Moss's house. Sterling and Mike Rutherford in conversation after the break. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to Four Wheels Good, the only weekly motoring programme to be on your screen throughout the year. Now, when you get Sterling Moss and Mike Rutherford together to talk about their favourite racing driver heroes, it makes for a fascinating conversation. Let's join them again in Sterling's study in London.
On the subject of the Brits, we've touched on Coulthard, we've touched on Irvine, possibly inheriting the crown as Britain's #1 driver in 97-98.
Depends on David Coulthard.
And what Damon does, of course.
Yeah.
What about the other guys? Our old friend Martin Brundle. I think a lot of people might be surprised to learn that you were actually a teammate of Martin Brundle at Audi in...
I think Martin, yes I was, of course, in touring
Many
cars.
years ago.
Oh, many years ago. And Martin was he's a brave driver. There's no doubt about it. But whether Martin will get to the position he'd like to get to in Formula One, I rather doubt it, actually. I mean, he's getting a bit long in the tooth for it now. But as a person, as a PR vehicle, and as an elder statesman, I think he's done a fantastic job. He really has. I mean, he used to be rather big-headed. Now I think he's confident without being big-headed. And I find that more refreshing.
He's a good ambassador for the sport, isn't he? Because he speaks well, he understands the finances, he's a businessman, he's multilingual. He's driven for, who hasn't he driven for?
Yeah, a lot.
150 odd Grand Prix. He's one of the most, if not the most experienced guy out there. And what I would like to see is Martin's abilities and knowledge and experience and interest in safety, for example, exploited by the world of Formula One.
I don't know if I agree with you on that, but nevertheless. No, I agree. I think he has a lot of experience that should be used. And I would presume that he's pretty good at development too.
He had that big crash, didn't he, at the start of the season? A very, very big shunt. I mean...
but he took that pretty well.
Well, did he? On the outside he did. You know more about this than I do. I mean, who had a bigger shunt than you? Can you really... I mean, yours was slightly different because it hospitalised you for a long time afterwards.
I've had quite a few that did.
Yeah, I mean...
Can you get over it? Yeah, I believe you can. I think it's here, not here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the body, it's the mind.
Yeah.
And I think it depends again on your makeup, the sort of person you are, the way what people are like around you, how you take to it, how much you want to get back in the car and prove that you can do it to yourself as well as other people. I don't think it affected him that much, frankly. I don't think he's materially worse than he was. I think he's about the same, isn't he?
I guess so. I just got the feeling that, and I still get the feeling that when you're a successful sportsman, you've been in the job for several years, you're in your late 30s, you've got a lovely family, who needs all that? Who needs to put their balls on the line every Sunday afternoon in the name of getting a few points for the Jordan Peugeot team? You don't need it, do you?
I think when it depends on your personality. I can tell you, when I drove, I wanted to do it because of the responsibility to myself. The most important race I ever did in my life was not next week, it was today. And that's the thing you must remember. If a guy feels that because today you can get hurt, today you can lose your reputation, today you can improve it, that is the thing that matters. And I think if a person is really channeled in onto that, I think it makes a big difference. And I suppose you do, certainly, obviously, I suppose, get to... I didn't, but I didn't last long enough in it, really, because I had to retire at 32. But I think as you get older, maybe you do feel, well, the responsibilities. I didn't have that, but I know it wasn't that old.
The other guy that we've forgotten in all this is Johnny Herbert, of course. Lovely bloke.
Oh, lovely bloke.
Had a couple of wins. I mean, it's a shame, isn't it, that he hasn't really got the credit. In many ways, he hasn't got the credit he deserves. He did go out and win 2 Grand Prix in one season with Benetton. Yeah, he was a bit lucky. He won them by default, but he still got those 2 Grand Prix wins that Derek Warwick didn't get, that Martin Brundle didn't get, that plenty of others, Eddie Irvine, for example, haven't yet got. I mean, credit where credit's due, surely.
Yes, the tragedy really, I think, with Johnny is that if you remember when he first came into racing, probably he looked as though he was going to be another, Senna, and because of the accident or whatever, he has tapered off a bit.
Nothing wrong with his accent; it's a bit like mine.
But I think he's the sort of guy that racing needs because he's so personable. He's such a nice bloke, and he's easy to talk to, and he gives over a lot.
He doesn't sulk when his car breaks down.
No, and he really enjoys it if he wins, which is another good thing.
Exactly.
And we'll have more musings from Mr. Moss next week. There are many facets to the motoring industry, and we're going to look at one company now who are reaping success, not just on people's love of motoring nostalgia, but on the corporate need for more unusual means of company promotion.
The Asquith Motor Carriage Company have hit upon a niche market that creates replica old vehicles that really turn heads. And this is just what the companies who commission them to make them want. Used as promotional or marketing tools at trade or public fairs, they're mobile adverts which are practical as well.
The marketing man likes it because it does help promote and sell a product. The financial director also likes the vehicle because he will find that once the vehicle is, say, 4 or 5 years old, we can prove that they're always being sold for at least what they cost when new. So he will get his money back, so he's interested in that aspect. And the marketing man's had free advertising, if you like, over that period to help promote and sell his product. Perhaps the most exciting one is in Japan, where Coca-Cola have modern mobile vending vehicles selling product. And they've been able to prove over the years that more than 3 times the number of people buy from an Asquith type of vintage style van, if you like, than who buy from a normal modern van.
Asquith must be the only vehicle manufacturer who still employs skilled carpenters, leather trimmers and sign writers. Old skills are married to new technologies, as the chassis and running gear usually is a Ford Transit for modern-day reliability, economy and ease of service. From underneath, the vehicles look like any other Transit. On top, the glass fibre body and period-style interiors transform and delight.
The future looks very exciting for us with 2 brand new products. The Taxi is a proper London black cab, and it has to conform to the very stringent conditions that the black cabs have to realise in the UK. A 25-foot turning circle, for example, wheelchair access, those are 2 of the main things that you have to have. We've also produced a limousine version of the same one with the fold-down hood, and inside you have TVs and videos or bar cabinets or just whatever anybody wants.
What a great idea. I wonder if in 100 years' time our children's children will be building glass fibre replicas of the Honda Civic or the Fiat Panda. I don't know about that. Well, we've run out of time. Thanks for your company. Please join us next week when Mike Rutherford will be in the studio showing us all the footage from his exploration around Argentina and Bolivia in the new Jeep Wrangler. We'll pay homage to the first true boy racer, the Golf GTI, and we're off to Madeira to have the first real drive of the new BMW Roadster, the fantastic Z3. Join us then. Goodbye.